There are people who've been running around this country for over a year now, talking about their elbows, flapping about. I just don't find that impressive.
I'm Jasmin Laine. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, give us a follow on other social media platforms as well. A conservative MP is traveling to Washington, which I'm sure is going to make mainstream media just, whoa, that's so crazy. For a party that is just so obsessed with not being American, they really cannot stop importing American narratives. And diplomats and politicians. It's the weirdest thing. Remember Build Canada Homes, by the way, that new bureaucracy that's supposed to build at speeds we haven't seen since, I don't remember, the fall of the Berlin Wall, generations, that sort of thing. Well, make sure you are not drinking any water while I tell you just how many homes they've built, because you will probably spit it out.
In Calgary, they heard more old hits than at the Elvis tribute show at the casino. And they come back and repeat them just like the leader writes it out for them in the back rooms. Imaginary taxes, no plan for affordability. We have a bill before this House that will give up to $1,800 for families to afford the cost of groceries in this country. We know that affordability is a challenge. That's why we have real policy, and they just play the old hits, Mr. Speaker.
As somebody who has had the opportunity to see both Liberals and Conservatives and NDP and the Greens in the back rooms behind the Hall of Commons during and before and after question period, I can tell you that as far as it looked to me, not a single person had anybody writing their talking points for them, though they do have a party platform to stand by. But the part here that Stephen McKinnon is complaining about, without actually realizing the moral of the story, is the fact that the Liberals are still stuck answering for the same issues that the Conservative Party has been talking about for a very long time. Why? Because nothing has changed. It's actually gotten worse.
From Rosenberg Research says that the Canadian economy is on life support and that the economy probably shrank in 2 of the past 3 quarters. And we are on a clear recession watch for 2026.
While the official data has not come out yet, multiple reports are suggesting that Canada's economy is going to shrink by about another 0.5% this quarter. And I mean, take a look at Stats Canada. They just posted this as well. Real GDP by industry, the November change was 0%. And sure, given the economic woes we're in, that's good. That's not a bad number. It's better than it being a negative number. But given the rhetoric of the Liberal government, it leaves you wondering, well, what happened to Bill C-5 and like rapidly approving things to like dramatically improve our economy and stuff? Because a 0% change that's not really, so you did nothing then to promote more industry, business? Nothing? Okay.
Today, only press conferences and expansive rhetoric exist. No actual results. For all the promises this Prime Minister made more than half a year ago about nation-building projects getting built at, quote, speeds not seen in generations. So what actually of today? Well, more than 60 major projects with real proponents in every natural resources sector are stuck in front of federal regulators with no end in sight. More investment flows out of Canada into the U.S. than the other way around, a historical anomaly that started in 2015, I wonder what happened then, and has gotten worse every single year since. No pipeline to anywhere is being built now because the private sector won't attempt it alone, since these same Liberals outright vetoed and approved one a decade ago from Lakeland to the Pacific for export to Asia to reduce dependence on the U.S., supported by the majority of Indigenous communities, but the court said consultation had to be redone. And since my first speech here in 2015 was in support of a west-to-east pipeline for Canadian energy independence and security, to bring Western oil to Eastern refineries and for exports to Europe, I have to note these Liberals killed that promise too by moving goalposts and death by delay. Those were the chances to make Canada united, self-reliant, affordable, and sovereign.
And this is a truth that Pierre Poilievre spoke to during his speech on Friday evening at the Conservative Convention in Calgary. Take a listen.
Canada has had the worst investment and the worst growth in the G7 over the last 10 years. Amazingly, Canadian citizens, this is an incredible fact, Canadian citizens now open more businesses in the United States of America than they do in their home country. That's elbows out.
And I have seen a ton of people on social media who, fair enough, they're frustrated with the Conservative Party for doing XYZ, for supporting things, for not striking things down. I'll point you to this, actually, because it's a perfect example of it. So Kirk Lubomov, who, although he has not always been the nicest to me, I do respect him. He puts out good work, thoughtful stuff at the very least. He writes, the Conservative Party of Canada has entered the self-preservation mode. They have offered to help support Liberal policies and will support the $12 billion Liberal GST rebate increase after spending all the time raging against it. They want to delay an election or prevent one with support, just like they did with Budget 2025 to 2026. Opposition in Canada is now basically theatrical. And he's referencing in here a tweet made or a post made by Andrew Scheer, where Andrew Scheer outlines that Canadians are really struggling right now. We have the worst grocery inflation in the G7. And then he adds, although the Liberal GST rebate will only provide $10 a week for a small number of Canadians and will do nothing to actually bring food prices down, we will not stand in the way, announcing that they are planning to allow that motion to pass. And that can sound really conflicting, right? If you're not thinking about strategy. This is something I spoke about when it came to the passing of Bill C-5, and honestly, even the passing of the Liberal budget, because at the end of the day, it could look as though this is some sort of like a capitulation, right? But in reality, Andrew Scheer is very explicit that this isn't going to work. This is dumb. The policy is bad and insufficient, but we're also not going to vote to stop struggling Canadians from getting a check. So there's a couple of points here that are notable. Number one, if Conservatives had chosen to vote against this, the Liberals would immediately run. Conservatives voted against Help for Families. They're blocking everything. It's their fault, blah, blah, blah. The media would then strip all nuance. They would ignore the criticism of the policy's inadequacy. And the conversation would then move to, why do Conservatives hate poor people? As it always does every time the Conservatives vote against something because the policy sucks, right? And as far as I see this, from looking at it strategically and what the end goal may be, this would be one of those things that, much like supporting Bill C-5, much like supporting the budget, actually strengthens the Conservatives' case in the long run. Because by not blocking these things, the Conservatives can now say, you got your check, you had your chance, it didn't work, prices are still high, we told you so, right? And that's absolutely devastating, because in all of these situations where Conservatives are frustrated that the party voted in favor of something or they didn't block it, it is so devastating for the Liberals, because it shifts the accountability right back onto them. Instead of having any scapegoats, instead of being able to lie and manipulate and omit all of these important details, it's if you block it, you never get that proof. And that proof of failure, without anybody else to blame because nobody stood in the way, is everything when it comes to strategy, the long game, and playing politics in order to win.
Land and financial tools.
Thank you. So how many of these units that you guys have done are move-in ready?
So 9 of the homes in Nunavut are moving ready. We just got the notice very soon. And all these units will have shovels in the ground in 2026.
So,
and as you know, it takes some time to build the units. And we're still waiting for the money from this budget bill.
So the first Canadian housing bureaucracy, CMHC, says that we need to build 500,000 housing units a year. And you said we've built 9. That's a long ways off 500,000.
Now, Mr. Carney, he promised to change all that. But here we are a year later. You know, what's changed? Sure, the words have changed, the style has changed, but what's changed in your life? Really? Well, let's go down the list. The illusion, Mr. Carney said he would spend less. He's spending $90 billion more, and he doubled the deficit that he inherited. The illusion, Mr. Carney said, a country that cannot feed itself has few options. Well, food inflation has doubled under his watch, and it's the worst in the G7. Groceries will cost the average family an almost unimaginable $17,600 this year. That's after-tax money. The illusion, build, baby, build. The reality has been block, baby, block. He hasn't got rid of a single anti-development law or bureaucracy. The No New Pipelines law, still here. And by the way, speaking of pipelines, how many of them are approved? 0.
But as much as the Conservatives are looking for ways to not be the scapegoat that the Liberals get to use, unfortunately, they do have another one. Vassy Kapelos was meeting with Pierre Poilievre's new campaign manager, and yikes, yikes, yikes.
One final question outside of the domestic, sort of outside of that same domestic realm. Why wasn't Trump's name used in the speech? And what should it tell us, if anything, about the campaign's approach or the party's approach right now to that issue?
A couple things. I mean, I don't think Trump's name was used in the Davos speech at all.
Which we pointed out frequently,
and that's fair. So, I mean, I don't remember there being a whole lot of debate about, well, you know, should he or should he not have and so on. So, you know, that's fine. We'll get that question. You know, from my perspective, what the leader was talking about was our, you know, our overall approach to international affairs and how we will stand up on the world stage for Canada. You know, we're proud Canadians. We're proud to stand up for our country and against any, you know, other force and, you know, that's coming against us. And so that was a broader point that was made, and I think we're ready to be serious about that for sure.
Is there any hesitation on your party's part to go full force into that issue, either because it seems to be a winning one, if you look at public opinion polls for the Liberals, or because there is a section of your base that doesn't not like Trump?
That question alone was so very telling, because the one thing they were asking is, you aren't saying Trump's name. Should Canadians be worried that you're not? That was not a journalistic question. That was narrative enforcement through and through. But it does reveal a lot about media incentives, largely because every single time Donald Trump is included in a headline or a story, their clicks multiply. But also the framing that, oh, well, Trump wasn't mentioned in your speech, therefore, are you avoiding him? Are you scared of something? Are you hiding something from voters? Are you worried about your base? That tells you absolutely everything, because the media assumption and narrative that they want is baked into the question that Canadian politics must orbit around Donald Trump, even when the topic has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump. And it always brings me back to this thought that I've had for so long, which is, could you imagine how great our country could be if the media in particular, because they do play a massive role in shaping public opinion, focused more on what actually matters, not what a foreign government is doing? Yes, tariffs suck for those affected by it. Want to know what sucks even more, though? The fact that our government has not pivoted at all, and it's been almost a year and they're still talking about Trump's tariffs without changing any policy whatsoever to make Canada a more investable and competitive nation. That sucks a lot more than Donald Trump's tariffs do. And sure, they may not enjoy dealing with the Trump administration. I'm sure he doesn't enjoy dealing with the Canadian administration that much either. It's just so silly, and it's so ridiculous how the media wants a Trump villain, always. Conservatives are talking about Canada here and what we can do to make it so that it doesn't even matter who the villain is. We're unfazed because we're strong, because we have changed the things that needed to be changed in order to be strong like we once were.
So two parts to that. I mean, first thing is, no, that's we're not hesitant to do that. I mean, the way to win an election is to stand up for the country. So if someone is coming against our country, we need to push back against them, and that's just, you know, bottom line. And I forget what the second point I was going to make was. So well, there we go.
Was about whether, last question for you, and then you're free, I promise. It was just about whether, you know, I remember listening to the former campaign manager, Jenny Byrne, on a podcast in which she said, you know, there is some crossover, right? And certainly we've seen public opinion polls to that fact. And I'm wondering if there will be any hesitance to dive into that issue for fear of alienating, and other Canadians will criticize this, but for fear of alienating Conservative supporters who don't not like Trump.
Right, and Jenny makes a great point there, and I'll just agree with her on that, is that, you know, a lot within our party, I mean, the reason that the positioning or the posturing of the Liberals was not received well by some in our party is that it's sort of seen as just performance pieces, right? And so for us, I think within the Conservative movement overall, we do strongly value a good relationship with the United States. It's just very difficult with this president to have that right now. You know, so there is an acknowledgement or recognition that, you know, ultimately, deals tend to come out of good conversations and diplomatic approaches and actually people working together. This administration in Washington is making it very, very difficult to do that. But for us, we just want to see results as conservatives, and so that's why it's not the performance side of it is not something we're really looking to do. We want to get those results, and so that's why we're not as keen, I think, to kind of adopt that same posture, but still to stand up for Canada.
It's not about alienating people who might like Trump, though.
The best way to win this election is to stand up for Canada.
Well, that's a note to leave it on then. Mr. Outhouse.
Man, do they ever want Canadians to think about Donald Trump 24/7. I wonder why they would want Canadians to do that. Maybe so that they don't have time or brain capacity to think about anything else that actually matters. And for the record, I feel alienated every single time I hear Mark Carney use a sports reference or analogy because I don't follow sports. I'm not a sports gal. I do like hockey, but not as much as he does. And ultimately, it's just like, who cares, man? Seriously, who cares? I don't care who's talking about Donald Trump more. That means nothing to me. Most Canadian conservatives, by the way, care a hell of a lot more about what's actually happening in our own country. And we're tired of Donald Trump being the center of opinion. Like, it's just, I don't know any conservatives. I do not personally know a single conservative that loves Donald Trump. Most of us don't care that much because Donald Trump is not our prime minister. Like, we care so much more about having good policy with results and a quality of life that is improving rather than the opposite. That's what we care about. So, like, just enough. I'm so tired. It's literally been a year plus of Donald Trump being the #1 topic. There are more stories posted on our news outlets about Donald Trump than there are of our own new government and new prime minister. That is unheard of. The only thing that I care about when it comes to Donald Trump, outside of the odd time that he makes comments that I think are very funny, is that we have a good relationship with America. And that's not because I just love Trump. No, that's because I'm not an idiot. And I understand that having a good relationship with America benefits us and is good for us, and it's realistic.
So, Brian, the Liberals sent some observers to the convention, and they were dismissive of Poilievre's speech. So their official statement accused the Conservatives of practicing American-style politics and of being far right. And I know that over the course of the 3 days, Conservatives debated on, increasing deportations and policies on pro-life, gender ideology, anti-woke, and self-defense. And a lot of that does sort of mirror Republican far-right values. But Brian, you think that these claims are outlandish. Why?
Well, because if anyone imports American-style politics into Canada, it's the Liberal Party. They literally keep bringing up Americans to talk to them. People from the Democrat Party to show up and teach them how to campaign, to honor them, whether it's Hillary Clinton or the people that backed Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris, who lost against Donald Trump in 2024, was recently here in Toronto and is speaking to her. Guess who flooded the hall that she was speaking at, the theater? It was the who's who of the liberal establishment. The Liberal Party revels in American politics. And
on that note, while it's not officially posted on the website, it has been widely reported that allegedly Hillary Clinton is actually speaking at the Liberal Party convention in April. So
right now, what is the Carney government doing? Relying on Donald Trump to try and boost their poll fortunes, relying on Donald Trump to set the ground for perhaps an early election campaign. So, I don't think that saying you're against DEI policies is far right. Not anymore. Maybe that was considered that before, but now it's very mainstream as people say, oh, wait a minute, I thought that was one thing and it turns out to be something else. As for defunding CBC, that's been a mainstream conservative point of view for well over a decade now.
And if you remember MP Jamil Jovani, who I had a chance to sit down with an interview a couple months ago, he had announced that he would be willing to help out the Carney government as he is personally friends with Vice President J.D. Vance and likely the next president of the United States of America for the Republican Party. I don't know how liberals are going to react to this one. I'm sure they'll call it treasonous, traitorous, you name it. But if it was a liberal doing it, they'd probably call it amazing and magnificent and exactly on the right track.
I'm on my way to Washington, D.C., and I want to explain to you, the Canadian people, exactly why, because you're probably going to hear about it. I'm going to Washington because I want to help Prime Minister Mark Carney be successful in negotiating a trade deal with the United States. Now, that might sound counterintuitive because I am a principled conservative. He is our liberal prime minister. But the reality is that this is not a partisan issue. CUSMA and trade with the United States is so important to the Canadian economy and to our future as an independent, self-reliant nation that conservatives and liberals don't need to fight over this at all. In fact, we need to work together. The leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, has said as much. He has offered help from conservatives to the Liberal government on this issue, and I'm acting on that. In my opinion, this is not about posturing or politics. This is about business and workers. This is about unions and entrepreneurs. This is about whether we have a growing economy with stability for investment and opportunity for our young people, or whether our economy is perpetually in a state of uncertainty. I am kind of sick and tired of the politics on this issue. I'm sick and tired of the posturing and the virtue signaling. I'm sick and tired of people being worried about what someone's going to call you on Facebook or on social media comments, what the media might say. The reality is that there are people suffering right now in our country because of the state of our economy. And in as much as we want Canada to be as strong and independent as possible, the reality is that 3/4 of our exports go to the United States. And if we want an economy that is good for our young people, if we want an economy that supports public services for seniors in our communities, we've got to work with the Americans. There are people who've been running around this country for over a year now, talking about their elbows, flapping about. I just don't find that impressive. I don't find it serious. I take this issue seriously. And as a guy who went to law school in the United States and has a strong network there, I think I have something to offer to help build bridges of communication between our two countries, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm alarmed when I see things like the talking about China and communist governments and doing more business with them. I get alarmed when I see announcements of electric vehicles now being imported into Canada while we have a crisis in our auto industry. I get alarmed in my home community when I see museums in Oshawa, like the Tank Museum or the Auto Museum, offering free admission to GM employees to do everything they can to just stand in solidarity with people whose lives have been turned upside down because of the economic uncertainty, the tariffs, and the lack of a good trade relationship with our biggest trading partner. So yeah, I say this to you knowing what's about to come my way. I know what all the critics are going to say, and I know what all the frothing, elbow-waving, anti-American activists are about to say about me. But I just don't care. I care more about you. I care more about the Canadian people, the people who want a future in this country and know that we need serious leadership, the people who believe that you elect people to do what's right and to stand up for you and fight for you above any kind of partisanship. I took this job because I thought there was important work that needed to be done in our country. And I thought that on behalf of the great people of Bowmanville, Oshawa North, I would have a chance to do some great work. And that's my motivation. So no matter what you hear, no matter what they say, I just want you to hear directly from me. I think you deserve good leadership in this country. And I think you deserve people who are going to cut through all the noise, cut through all the posturing and the virtue signaling, and just try to deliver something good for you and your kids. And to me, that's what a trade deal with the United States promises. It promises more stability so that we can grow our economy and that our country can be strong and awesome and live up to its enormous potential. And I think that's what we all want. And that's why I'm going to Washington, D.C.
Personally, I say it's about time. And good job, Jamil, for standing your ground. And yeah, you will be hit with a whole bunch of smears and slurs. I get called a traitor like multiple times a day. But I'm hoping that it will be incredibly worth it. And I'm happy that it's happening, even though I wish it had happened many months ago. I'm Jasmin Laine. Thank you so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below. And I will talk to you tomorrow.